The musty scent of old books always comforted me. It felt like home. I, Eleanor, was searching for a rare first edition, my fingers trailing along the spines.
The bookshop was crowded, stuffy, and filled with the scent of old paper. I, William, much preferred the crisp air of the outdoors, but I was on a mission for a gift.
A figure bumped into me, jostling the books in my hand. "Oh, excuse me," he mumbled, not even bothering to look up.
Distracted by the chaos of the bookstore, I accidentally bumped into someone. "Excuse me," I muttered, hoping to quickly find my escape.
"Watch where you're going," I retorted, annoyed by his careless demeanor. He finally looked up and our eyes met.
Her sharp tone made me pause. I looked up, ready to apologize properly, but the words caught in my throat. She had the most expressive blue eyes I had ever seen.
He was tall, with unruly brown hair and eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 stories. But his face was set in a bored expression, and I instantly decided I disliked him.
She was beautiful, with fiery red hair pulled back in a loose braid, highlighting the delicate features of her face. But her eyes, though captivating, were filled with icy disapproval.
"Do you need something?" I asked, my voice laced with impatience. He seemed to hesitate, as if surprised by my sharp tone.
Her question caught me off guard. Was I that transparent? "I'm looking for a gift," I managed, trying to regain my composure.
"Well, try not to knock anyone over in the process," I said, pushing past him to continue my search. My first impression was set. He was just another arrogant, careless man.
"Right," I muttered under my breath, watching her disappear down the aisle. Her sharp wit was unexpected and strangely intriguing.
The following week, I was surprised to see him again, this time in the university library. He was hunched over a table piled high with books, a frown etched on his face.
The library was my least favorite place, too quiet, too restrictive, but this research project was essential, and I was determined to find the information I needed.
Fate, it seemed, had other plans. Our professor announced a group project, and to my dismay, the only open seat was at William's table.
I glanced up from my books and saw her standing awkwardly by the table, her eyes scanning the room as if looking for an escape route. "Looks like we're partners," I said, trying to sound less irritated than I felt.
I could feel my stomach clench. "Wonderful," I muttered, taking the empty seat. This project was about to become infinitely more complicated.
Her tone made it clear she wasn't thrilled about the partnership, but I couldn't help but feel a flicker of amusement. This was going to be interesting.
As we delved into the project, I found myself increasingly surprised by William. His knowledge of history was impressive, and he had a way of explaining complex ideas with a simple clarity that I admired.
Behind the icy exterior, I discovered a passionate intellect and a sharp wit that matched my own. She challenged my opinions, forcing me to defend my views, and I found myself enjoying our debates immensely.
One evening, while taking a break from our studies, I noticed a familiar melody drifting from his headphones. It was a rare recording of a classical piece I adored.
I saw her eyes widen in recognition as she heard the music. "You know this piece?" I asked, surprised. Classical music wasn't exactly popular among our peers.
"It's one of my favorites," I admitted a little shyly. Soon we were lost in conversation, sharing our love for music, our dreams for the future, and our hidden vulnerabilities.
For the first time, I saw a different side to her, a softer, more vulnerable side that broke down the walls she had so carefully erected. And in that moment, I felt a connection with her that I had never experienced before.
Section 5, Shifting Perspectives, A Change of Heart.
The more time we spent together, the more my initial dislike began to fade. I saw his kindness towards others, his dedication to his passions, and his quiet sense of humor.
I found myself looking forward to our library sessions, not just for the project, but for the chance to be in her presence. Her laugh, once a sound that grated on my nerves, now warmed me from the inside out.
One rainy afternoon, as we were leaving the library, he offered me his umbrella, insisting I take it despite my protests.
"I don't melt in the rain," I said, trying to sound nonchalant, but inside my heart was pounding.
And I'd rather not catch a cold, I retorted, but I couldn't suppress the smile that tugged at my lips. He was full of surprises, this arrogant, careless man.
Her smile, when it finally came, lit up her entire face and made my chest ache in a way I couldn't explain. I was falling for her and I was terrified.
Jealousy arises, the entrance of a rival.
The annual university ball was approaching, and I found myself hoping that Michael would ask me. However, my hopes were dashed when I saw him deep in conversation with another girl, the beautiful and popular Amelia.
Amelia was charming, witty, and everything I thought I wanted in a girl. But as I spoke to her, all I could think about was Sarah, and the way her eyes sparkled when she laughed.
Amelia, sensing my gaze, gave me a triumphant smirk. My heart sank. It seemed my initial judgment of Michael had been right after all. He was just like all the others, drawn to superficial beauty.
I excused myself from Amelia, feeling a surge of jealousy as I saw Sarah talking to another guy, her laughter reaching me across the crowded room. Why did it matter so much?
The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I tried to focus on my friends, on the music, on anything but the sight of Michael and Amelia dancing together, their laughter echoing in my ears.
I couldn't concentrate on Amelia's words. All I could see was Sarah, her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't decipher, but it made my chest tighten with a strange ache.
Confessions and realizations, a heartfelt talk.
Later that night I found myself alone on the balcony, the cool night air doing little to soothe my tumultuous emotions.
I searched for her in the crowd, my heart pounding when I finally spotted her on the balcony. Her shoulders slumped as she gazed out at the night.
"You look like you could use some company," a familiar voice said. I turned to see Michael standing behind me, his eyes filled with concern.
"Are you all right?" I asked, the concern in my voice genuine. She looked up at me, her blue eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "No," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion.
And then I did something completely uncharacteristic of me. I poured out my heart to him, confessing my feelings, my insecurities, and my foolish jealousy.
As she spoke, a wave of relief washed over me. She cared. She actually cared. And in that moment I knew I couldn't let my own fear and pride stand in the way of what we could have.
Love conquers all. A happy ending.
When I finished, he gently cupped my face in his hands and looked at me with such tenderness that I felt my breath catch in my throat. "Sarah," he began, his voice husky with emotion, "I never meant to hurt you."
I was a fool to think I could ignore these feelings, I confessed, my heart pounding. "You drive me crazy with your sharp wit and your even sharper tongue, but you also make me laugh like no one else."
He leaned down and kissed me then, a kiss that was both tender and passionate, erasing all my doubts and fears. When we finally broke apart, breathless and exhilarated, I knew that I had found something rare and precious.
She looked up at me, her eyes shining with love and happiness. "You're not so bad yourself, Sarah," she teased, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw.
As we stood there, bathed in the soft moonlight, I realized that sometimes love could blossom in the most unexpected of places, even amidst a backdrop of old books and initial disdain.
I pulled her close, reveling in the feel of her in my arms. I had found my home, not in the great outdoors as I had always believed, but in the warmth of her love.
Epilogue. A glimpse into their future.
Years later, surrounded by our own chaotic family, I still couldn't help but smile at the memory of that first awkward encounter in the bookstore.
Our love story wasn't always easy, but it was ours. Built on a foundation of shared passions, intellectual sparring, and a love for old books that had brought us together in the first place.
Life had a funny way of surprising you, and sometimes the greatest love stories were those that began with a healthy dose of dislike.
And as I looked at Sarah, her eyes sparkling with love and laughter, I knew that I wouldn't change a single page of our story.